Thank you very much. It is a great honor to be here. I've met so many nice people, and I don't think the world has a clue how nice the people are in Hull, England. And I was in London, and I've got to tell you that there were a couple of rather snitty people in London. And I got in a taxi to catch the train here, and I said to the taxi driver, "Can you take me to King's Cross?" And he says, "Yes, where do you want to go?" And I said, "I'm going to Hull." And he said, "What did you do wrong?" And I took offense at that. In preparation for this, I have been watching Tiger football games. Okay? And I've been rooting for us, but it's not helping very much. But we still might beat Tottenham on Sunday. That's my hope. I will be preaching at St. John's Sunday night, so I will not be at the game, which is unfortunate because I have a Tigers kit I was going to wear. I mean, I was going to be there. Anyway, so here I'm to talk about Christianity on trial. And my goal is to speak to you for about 45 or 50 minutes. And then when I'm done, answer questions until they kick us out of here, if there are questions. And nothing is off limits. Ask about my lecture, ask about my life, ask about the law. I know nothing about British law, so I won't be of much help. But ask anything you choose, and I would be honored to get to visit with you personally as well afterwards. I've got no place to go until a meeting at Leeds, in Leeds in the morning at 9, and we'll get that done. So with that, let's get started. I grew up in a town called Lubbock, Texas. It's in the panhandle of Texas, which might mean nothing to you. Think desert. You're getting closer. I grew up in Lubbock, Texas, and I became a Christian as a young teenage boy. Both of my parents were Christians. And what I want you to understand is the road of life that has me in Hull, England on the 19th of November, 2014. And so I started out in Lubbock, Texas, and if you're going to travel the road I've lived, and you see those road signs, do you even have billboards over here? Is this okay thing to do? We have them all over in Texas. It's like pollution of sorts because there's so many of them. But I grew up as a teenager, and I'm a Christian as a teenager. I decide that I want to be a preacher. So I go to a seminary school and I get a degree in biblical languages, Hebrew and Greek. My dad was always fond of telling me that he could speak some of every language except Greek. And the first time I fell for it, I asked him to say some Russian, and he said, "That's Greek to me." But I learned how to read and translate the Bible. And the reason I did that is I was frustrated already as a young man with people telling me what the Bible said and meant. I wanted to read it and I wanted to understand it on my own because I wanted to know whether or not I could live and trust it. And so I started doing that as a young man. And then the circumstances of life steered me to law school. The reason I went to law school was not because I wanted to be a lawyer. I never even knew lawyers much growing up. The reason I went to law school is because I still wanted to be a preacher, but I wanted to be a preacher with no strings attached. I wanted to be a preacher who could make enough money doing a vocation that I didn't have to ever worry about being a preacher and making money doing that. And so I went to law school with no great hopes of being a big lawyer. I just wanted to find a job I could do while I was preaching and teaching. And so that's the road that I went. Now, as a lawyer, I found out early that my faith sometimes came into conflict with what I was doing. Not always. And I figured out how to work around that most of the time. But I recall one time in particular when my boss called me into his office. And he called me in and he pointed his finger at me. And he said, Jim, you don't mind if I point my finger at you, do you? Okay. He pointed his finger at me. And he said, Mark, you have a skill set that could make you an A+ lawyer. But you will never be that. You won't even be an A lawyer. You won't be an A- lawyer. The best you're ever going to be is B+. Because of one thing. And I said, what's that? And he said, you value your family over your job. He said, my daughter is 13, just had a birthday party. I've never been to any of her birthday parties because I'm working. He said, there are 5 A+ lawyers in Texas. And I'm one of them, he said. Not Mark, the gentleman, my boss. And he says, you could be number 6, but you've got to quit going home. You've got to quit attending your kids' parties and events at school, and you need to spend every waking hour working. Do you understand what I mean? And I looked at him, and externally, out loud, I said, truthfully, yes, I understand what you mean. Internally, I said, you have no clue. I'm not doing this to be an A+ lawyer. I don't give a rip. I just need to make enough money that I can keep teaching at church. So I'll be really happy as a B+. And I'm going to my kids' birthday parties. That was 25 years ago. That man has since found faith, and it's helping him deal with some very strong issues with his children who are struggling with some things right now as adults. It's been an interesting walk as a lawyer. In the process, so I'm going down this road of life as a Christian, but all of a sudden I find I have a whole different road as a lawyer. Here's my lawyer road. The American Lawyer, which is not a big deal, but it's still a magazine, so it felt big. The American Lawyer, it's got a subscription of like 30. The American Lawyer puts me on the cover a number of years ago and says, am I the next big thing? And then the New York Times starts writing really nice stuff about us because I'm winning good cases. The Wall Street Journal puts me down as the lawyer who beats up Merck. The Financial Times, which seems British to me, just earlier this year wrote up one of my cases as well. Law 360 called me the titan of the plaintiff's bar. The British Medical Journal put a picture in there and had the write-up. I get on TV. All of these things are going on in my world as a lawyer. Then I don't really care. I mean, it's kind of nice, don't get me wrong, but this is not my goal in life. And so here's what's happened. These two roads have intersected for me. The road of law, my job, and the road of my Christian faith. And where they've intersected, I've written this book, Christianity on Trial. And it's gotten some marvelous opportunities for me. And because I'm a lawyer, and I make money as a lawyer, and sometimes we make enough money to do this, I'm able to say to you, please take one of these for free. If you haven't gotten one yet, they're available at the desk. If you don't, if they run out of copies, if you'll leave your name and contact information, I'll make sure I send you one. Because it's a lot of what I'll be talking about tonight. Melvin has also got a book that's free for you as well, Road to Reality. And so I hope you'll grab those books and not use them as things to prop open the door only. My wife has said if you're having trouble going to sleep, she recommends chapter 3. I wrote this book. And I wrote the book because of a number of reasons. But I have two intended audiences for the book. One audience are my own children. I have 5 children. Our son is 30. He and his wife live in Jerusalem, where he's got a position at Hebrew University. Though he did live in England for 8 years. He studied, took his master's and DPhil at Oxford, stayed on as doing postdoc work and teaching in philosophy and logic there, and then has moved to Hebrew University. And then we have 4 daughters. Yeah, heaven help me. I live in a house of estrogen. When Will's the oldest, and when he would leave, when the girl, this is being taped. Ugh. So, okay, don't tell anybody. So when Will would leave, okay, our son, we'd line up in the driveway to say goodbye to him. And it'd start with the youngest, our Sarah with an H, our Sarah with an H, and then Rebecca, and then Rachel, and then Gracie, and then Becky, my wife, which is their age. They actually are the exact opposite in height. The youngest is the tallest, all the way down to my wife. Weird deal. And then I'm standing next to Becky. So Will would give Sarah a big old hug. I love you, Sarah. I love you, Rebecca. I love you, Gracie, or Rachel. I love you, Gracie. I love to Becky, and then lean into me, and it'd be, good luck, Dad. Off he'd go. So my house of estrogen. So anyway, so I write this book because my children have grown up. Well, 2 are still at home, but the 3 older ones that have graduated from university and grad school. And I want them to know my thought process on this. It's very important to me. So I wrote it with them in mind, but I also wrote it with people who are not believing folks. And I don't pretend that a lot of those people are going to read the book, especially if I sell it to them. But I figure if they get a 16-pound book for free, then I got a shot they might read some of it. And so we give it away. But my goal is and it's not 16 pounds, it's $16. So whatever that works out to, I can't get the system quite right. But it makes the cab drivers really happy because I think I'm tipping them more than I'm supposed to. But it looks like, to me, we have this game called Monopoly. And it looks like Monopoly money to me. It's just kind of like, here, take some of these green things, you know, and here, have a pink one. The book was written with both sets in mind, and what it does is it comes out of me 54 years on this earth trying to figure out what's going on. Here's my issue. I want to know why. I want to know, why is life the way it is? Bless you. Why is life the way it is? I want to know, why am I the way I am? Why do I think the things I think? Why do I do the things I do? Why is it impossible for me to say no to carbohydrates? Why am I always needing to lose just this? I mean, all it is eat less and exercise more, right? So why don't I do that? I want to. Why am I the way I am? Why do I find myself doing things I don't want to do? Why do I find myself failing to do what I'd like to do? Why sometimes am I short-tempered? Why sometimes am I impatient? Why sometimes am I selfish or greedy? I don't want to be that way. I have a daughter who gets hangry. Do you know hangry? Hangry. H. Don't y'all say H instead of H?
Well, it's H. No.
You say H?
H, yeah.
Oh. I thought someone said H earlier.
You probably did.
Okay. Well, H or H and angry is hangry. That's what happens with my daughter Gracie. When she gets hungry, she gets angry. So it's hangry. And all that means is feed her and she'll be nice. We have another daughter that gets slangry. That means if she doesn't have enough sleep, she's angry. Put her to bed, she'll wake up, she'll be nice. It's just the things we learned in our house. But why am I the way I am? I want answers to questions. So here's what I've done in my life. I've asked myself, how's this world built? Where's this world come from? Why are people the way they are? Why are there people in the Middle East right now who behead someone and put it on the video? You know, our son lives in Jerusalem, so we pay attention to the news. Some people came into a synagogue with knives and guns and killed 4 people and severely wounded 8 others. And if you ask them why, they would say because of what the Israelis did to the Palestinians before. And if you go to the Israelis and say, why did you do that to the Palestinians before? Because of what they did to us. Well, why did y'all do it? Because of what they did to us. And nobody knows where it started. And nobody knows where it's going to end. Because Netanyahu has now said, we'll get revenge. And then they'll get revenge. And then they'll get revenge. And then they'll get revenge. And I don't know what the answer is. But I want to know what the problem is. I want to know why these things are the way they are. So here are the issues that I need answers to. What makes most sense of all of this stuff? I ask myself with these choices. I can have a view of the world that says there's a Christian God. And I want to look at the Christian God and understand the Christian God and see if that illuminates or makes sense of the way I am and the way I see the world. In other words, is this Christian view correct? Does it explain the big questions that I have in life? I'm not interested in Christianity as a neat way to live. I can figure that stuff out. I want to know if it's true. I want to know if it's valid. Now, there's another option. Maybe it's another God scheme. Maybe it's the Muslim Allah. Maybe it's some incarnation of Buddha. Maybe it's another world religious scheme. Is that what makes sense? Does that explain the way things are most? Or maybe it's the fact there is no God. And no God is the answer. And this world is just what chance and time have made it. And I ultimately, and you, are a sack of chemicals. So what is it? Which view makes the most sense? Which one is best? See, as lawyers, we're taught in court there are 2 kinds of evidence that we're allowed to present. What is called direct evidence and what's called circumstantial evidence. Direct evidence is this. I know it's raining outside and I will testify to that. And if you ask me, Mark, how do you know it's raining? I'll say, because I was standing outside in the rain. I have direct evidence. It's that water smashing on my face. By the way, I went to Manchester. And it was on my 3rd or 4th visit when I asked the fellow next to me, I said, does it rain all the time in Manchester? And he says, you know how to tell the weather in Manchester? I said, no. He said, go downtown, get on an upper story of a building, and look out at the hills. If you cannot see the hills, it's raining. If you can see the hills, the forecast is for rain. So, I mean, I can have direct testimony. I know it's raining, I saw it. But there is in the law circumstantial evidence as well. In fact, it's what you generally have most. I didn't see it raining, but I was in Manchester. I had the weather forecast of rain, And the people were coming in off the streets wearing rain slickers with umbrellas that they're shaking the water off of. And I'm hearing thunder, and something's going plat, 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 plat against the window panes. Now, that's not direct evidence that it's raining. That's circumstantial evidence. But that's allowed in courts in America, in England, in most any of the Western courts, because that's what most evidence is. Very rarely do you have an eyewitness to an event that sees the whole thing. But you've got circumstances that go together. So my question is, do the circumstances of life bear testimony to the Christian God being the correct view of the world and the way things are? Other God or gods, maybe it's the Norse thing and it's Odin and Thor and Loki and all of them, but other God or gods or no God? What makes the most sense, starting with me and how I feel, how I act, how I behave, what I think, how I live? And this is the process that I went through. And I don't have time tonight to go through the whole thing with you. So given a choice tonight, I'm going to take out other gods. Though I'm glad to talk about that another time. Melvin, if you'll invite me back, I'll come back. Next time I have to go to Leeds, this is sort of on the way. And I'd be delighted to come back. But I want to focus just on these two in the interest of time. Now, here are the issues that I've got that I want to address. These are just Mark Lanier realities. Maybe not all of these apply to you. Maybe they do. You figure out which ones apply to you and don't worry about the others. These are my issues. Issue number one. I believe in objective morality. Let me explain that. Objective morality means not just what I think is moral, but there really is a morality outside of me. There's something that is a morality. It may not be for every ethical issue, every decision you make. No, I don't believe that. But there are some core ethical, moral truths that are there, whether I care to agree with them or not. The best example I can think of within our lifetime or close to it is Hitler's final solution. I don't know many people that I've ever met who will say what Hitler did was a moral thing. It was okay, Mark. After all, Hitler was duly elected. The Reichstag had been the ones who put out, stopped the habeas corpus rights, allowed the setup of the concentration camps. It was all legal at the time. By the way, if you ever get bored, read the Nuremberg trial transcripts where they tried those war criminals. It was a struggle for there were four prosecutors. One from Great Britain, one from the US, one from the Soviets, and one from France. The one from Great Britain and the US, they all met in London. The one from Great Britain and the US were very concerned that this trial be done in a just and fair manner, that the accused have right to a lawyer, that the lawyer have a right to cross-examine, that real charges be brought. And it was a huge frustration because they couldn't figure out what German laws had been broken. I mean, the Germans didn't break their law. The Soviet did not understand what was going on. He said, we do this in Russia. We don't need to know what law they broke. They don't need a lawyer. This is very simple. They come in. We say, how do you plead? Guilty, not guilty. If they say guilty, we take them out and shoot them. If they say not guilty, we say, The court finds you guilty. We take them out and shoot them. It takes 5 minutes apiece. The Frenchmen agreed. But the Great Britain and the American prevailed, and they had to work hard to bring up these charges. Objective morality means it doesn't matter if the guys doing it think they're doing an okay thing. It doesn't matter. It's wrong. It's not wrong because they violated their conscience. No, it's just wrong whether they think it is or not. That's what I mean by objective morality. I believe in objective morality. I also believe in human uniqueness. It's from a comic strip, Monty. Started to put Leonardo da Vinci's up there, but I didn't want anybody to cringe at the naked guy, so I put in the guy with boxers. It's the American in me, sorry. I believe in human uniqueness. I had a debate on the radio in London this morning with an atheist. And in the process of it, one of the big issues that we kept coming back to was the issue of human uniqueness. And I'll tell you maybe a little bit more about that in a moment. But I believe that humans are unique. I think there's something very special. As I'm fond of saying, I'm not a vegetarian. My son is. He's a vegan, actually. He won't even eat eggs. I just don't get it, okay? And I don't want to offend any vegans out here. Man, I got all the vegan cookbooks. I can talk vegan with you. And my son's wife is gluten-free. At their wedding reception, it's vegan, gluten-free food. I saddle up to my 17-year-old Rebecca and I said, honey, when we get through with this, can we go eat? She says to me, Dad, I feel like I'm eating crunchy air. Okay, so there's no offense to the vegetarian, but I believe there's something unique about humans. I don't eat them. There is a value in a human that's different than the value in, and don't get me wrong, my mom has a parrot that she's convinced is talking to her daily. And my wife have cats. I refuse to accept that they're mine. My daughters have a dog. Oh, don't laugh. We've got more animals than probably this entire place put together. We've got kangaroos. We've got lemurs. We've got pigs. We've got goats. We've got sheep. We've got every kind of bird fowl there is. And they foul every place. I know why that's what they're called. So I'm all for that. But out of all of those animals, there's nobody. My daughter Sarah keeps saying to me, Tizzy is our dog. Dad, Tizzy is your 5th daughter. I said, no, Tizzy's not my daughter. Yes, she is. She's your daughter. No, she's not. Dad. I said, Sarah, I would lay down my life for my daughters. Let the car run over Tizzy. I'm not getting in there. At which point, Dad, I can't believe you said that. I believe in love. And I'm not just talking about some chemical ooey-gooiness that I have because I think my wife's adorable. I think my wife's gorgeous. But if she got hit by a car, burned horribly beyond recognition, lost her ability to think, I would not leave her bedside, and my love for her would not cease. I believe in love. Real, true love. You know, I thought about putting in the movie clip. Do y'all watch Princess Bride, the movie? Anyway, you just remember, what's worth living for? True love. Anyway, all right, I'll keep moving. Here's point number 4. I, Mark Lanier, am not what I'd like to be. I'm just not. I'd like to be a better person than I am. I'd like to be better disciplined. I'd like to have greater compassion. I'd like to be more tuned in to certain people and certain things. I'd like to be more gracious and have a better heart of gratitude. Yeah, I can look at, oh, Larry Burgess is right there. Larry, wait, raise your hand. Larry has done so much in coordination with me, and I'm horrible at saying thank you, Larry, but thank you, Larry. I mean, the wonderful people, Melvin, all these kind people who've been helping us this week feel at home here. Melvin said, we brought a team from our church of 12 people. Maybe you've met some of them. If not, you'll meet Mark Wilkie. He cooks for everybody. I think he's cooking for Hull on which night and doing the craft fair. But we brought these people over. And I said to Melvin, I said, how are things going before I got here? And he said, it's like they've been here for a year. Then he said, I mean in a good way. We're the guests that won't leave. No, but I want to be more appreciative. There are things I'm not what I would like to be. Next and last, I long for something more. Do you ever have that nagging inside you that says there's got to be more to life? There's got to be something more. There's got to be more than just this. I mean, as a kid, I loved to read Tolkien because it was another world. And it stirred up within me this recognition that it fed that yearning. There's got to be more to life. There's got to be, and I don't ever, there's got to be more than this. So those are the questions, and then I ask the question, which explains the presence of these issues in me? Why am I even this way? And how do I handle this? The fact that I have this belief in objective morality. You know, look, I could tell you, I believe that I'm in London right now. I could say that. I might even be so bizarrely wrong that I believe it. I believe I'm in London. And you might say to me, Mark, you're not in London. If you were in London, you would be going to Hyde Park to go for a run in the morning. And Hyde Park's not here. So, well, Hyde Park may not be here, but I still think I'm in London. You would say, he's a little daft. You would say, well, Mark, you're not in London. You see, the Thames is not the river that's here. It's a different river. And I might say to you, oh, no, I'm pretty sure I'm in London. Yeah, I understand the Thames isn't here, but that doesn't mean anything. I'm in London. Well, no, Mark, our taxis here are vans. Say, no, I'm in London. I understand that. Say, and I mean, London's a city of 10, 12 million people. Hull has, what, 250,000? I say, no, I'm in London. And my life would not be consistent with my view of reality. My view of reality would be wrong. And so my question is, the fact that I've got these things, is there a view of the world, a view of reality that explains why I am the way I am and I have these issues that I've set out? Is there an explanation? Which view makes more sense? Am I living in London or Hull? Am I living in a world that's explained by the Christian God? Or a world that's explained by no God? Let me walk through these with you briefly. I don't want to spend too much time with them, and we'll spend a little more time with some than the other. Christian God, green. No God, orange. Here we go. I believe in objective morality. I used the Hitler example. Let's go back to it. Let me tell you what I do as a lawyer. As a lawyer, I look at Hitler, and I think he's wrong. I've yet to argue with anybody who defends the actions of Hitler and the Third Reich as far as the final solution is concerned. I have not found anyone who finds it defensible. But I ask myself this question: if a judge forced me to, how would I defend Hitler in a court of law? And I got to tell you, You give me the right jury, and I can walk Hitler. Because I honestly don't think, under the view of no God, let me say it this way. There are many people, many people who don't believe in God who would never walk Hitler. And I'm not trying to insinuate everybody would. What I'm saying, though, is I can make an argument that would appeal to some of these people. Here's the argument. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, long before Adolf Hitler, in 1859, a Brit, a man by the name of Charles Darwin wrote On the Origin of the Species. And Charles Darwin is credited with figuring out the descent of humanity from apes. And not simply from apes, but the descent all the way down, what we call evolution. And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and this is especially true if all of my jurors don't believe in God. I've yet to find jurors who don't believe in God who don't also agree with evolution. I mean, you're kind of there. So I'd say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you know that's true. I know that's true. We are evolved from a common ancestor with the apes we have today. Now, after Charles Darwin, he had a gentleman, a biologist who was a friend of his, who wrote the first textbook, really, in biology in modern times. His name was Herbert Spencer. And Herbert Spencer published Principles of Biology, and in that textbook, he made a statement that is often credited to Darwin, but it wasn't Darwin's statement. He spoke about the survival of the fittest. Now, by that, Spencer was not talking about what many people misunderstand, the idea that the strongest survive. What Spencer was saying is that species that is most fit for the environment in which it finds itself will be the species that thrives and survives. While those species less fit for that environment will not have the same chance and likelihood of survival. Now, as the 1800s are rolling towards an end, there's another gentleman, son of a Lutheran minister, over in Germany. His name is Friedrich Nietzsche. And Nietzsche recognizes the truth of what's been taught by Darwin, by Spencer, and Nietzsche goes a step further. And Nietzsche points out that we used to be apes. Today, we are Homo sapiens. We are humans. But tomorrow, we will be a super advanced human, the Übermensch in German. We'll be the sometimes translated Superman, the Overman. We will be so much further removed from the humanity of today that the man of the future, the Superman, Superwoman, will look back on us, the humanity of he was writing in the 19th century, the same way we look back on the apes. So our responsibility, knowing this now, our responsibility is to move as quickly as we can toward that future. And the way we do that is by purifying our breed. We will get rid of those people that are either morally or mentally deficient. So we'll take those with mental deficiencies. We will take those who are gay. We will take those of suspicious Jewish heritage. And we'll get rid of them. We will cull the herd, in hunter speak. We will make it better. We will move us quicker towards what we're meant to be, our destiny. We will service the entire human future and race. And we'll go a step further. Since we have no trouble experimenting on apes, monkeys, if we're going to cure the Ebola virus, doing work on the AIDS virus, within... Did I lose a mic? Hello. We have no trouble experimenting on those primates to help us. So, for the sake of the Superman, we won't just kill this group of people. We won't just cull them out of the herd. We will do experiments on them that will help those that are surviving. We'll do medical experimentation. We'll do things so that we develop better drugs for the fittest among us. Now, that should turn all of our stomachs. But it's not a bad argument. If all we are is a sack of chemicals, why not make the chemicals the best they can be? If there's no God out there saying it's wrong, if there's no reference to it, what's the argument against that? I told you our son took his PhD in philosophy and logic. A lot of his friends don't believe in God and yet have these magnificent PhDs from Oxford in ethics. And so I get to argue with them a lot. It's wonderful. Especially, they'll argue with me for a long time if I'll buy dinner. Free food? Great. Got to talk. It's okay. Pass the chips. And so I would sit, and one really smart guy, in Texas we would say, he's smarter than a tree full of owls. Really smart guy. Sorry. Brought you a little Texas. Smarter than a tree full of owls. And he and I are still ongoing in this dialogue. Because the perplexing problem is, how can someone say it's... I mean, where are you going to get this? Where are you going to say what's wrong? Here's some choices. Nietzsche says the human being must become better and more evil. What he meant was, we've got to get rid of these ideas of morality that we've inherited from our religious folks so that we can become better. We've got to quit thinking it's wrong to do these things. By the way, that's Hitler shaking hands with Nietzsche's sister at the Nietzsche archives. Hitler, a big reader of Nietzsche. So we've got to get rid of this kind of stuff. Now, I want to talk philosophy for a moment. How am I doing time-wise? We're doing okay. I'm a little bit behind. All right, keep going here. Here's your philosophy. So, Socrates is a famous Hellenic philosopher. Socrates, his student was, anybody? Plato, very good. Whose student was Plato? Aristotle. And whose student was Aristotle? Alexander the Great. That's good. All right. If you ever want to remember Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, think about the SPA. S-P-A. SPA. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Then you pass the test. Okay, now, see, I have kids. I teach them this stuff. All right, so Socrates doesn't write anything that we have today. Plato, his student, wrote the events of Socrates' life that we are most familiar with. And he wrote something about Socrates' encounter with a fellow named Euthyphro. Euthyphro is a boy, a young man, who's headed to court. And he comes across Socrates. Socrates is an old man headed to court. Socrates is being tried for corrupting the youth of Athens. Socrates is going to be found guilty and condemned to death and put to death. Meanwhile, so Socrates is walking to court to face this crime of corrupting the youth of Athens. Along the way, he meets this youth of Athens, Euthyphro. Euthyphro is going to court as a corrupted youth who's trying to get the old guy killed, not Socrates, his father. Socrates spends the whole discussion, the whole time walking, trying to reform the corrupted youth, which is part of Plato's irony, because Socrates is going to be convicted and put to death for corrupting youth. But he's trying to actually reform the youth. And they have this dialogue. Socrates says, "Why are you trying to have your father put to death?" And the youth says, "Because my father's done a horrible thing." And Socrates says, "Who says it's a horrible thing?" And the youth says, "I do." And Socrates says, "Well, how come you get to decide what's bad, what's horrible, what's evil, what's wrong? What makes you any better than someone else?" And he says, "Because I know the will of the gods." Socrates says, "So which of the gods has this will?" And he says, "Well, what do you mean?" Socrates says, "You know the gods, they disagree all the time, and sometimes they're rather fickle and they change their minds. How do you know which god has this will?" And Euthyphro says, "Well, it would be the majority of the gods." He says, "Oh, so now it's the stronger gods." "Yeah, I guess the stronger gods. But what if they change their minds?" "Well, I don't know." And they keep walking through this dialogue. And Euthyphro tries, "Well, you know, it'd be the majority rules. No, if it's not the majority, then it's the smarter ones. How about the smarter ones? Can they decide it?" Socrates says, "So the smarter ones, but aren't they the ones who'd be smart enough to manipulate everybody else?" "I hadn't thought of that, Socrates. That's a good point." Okay, maybe it's not the smarter ones. Maybe it's just, and it's not the 51% of the gods vote rule. Maybe it's, maybe it's just this idea that there is morality. There is this idea of goodness that's just out there. And Socrates says, so is God good? Are the gods good because they happen to be very talented at doing these good things? Or are the gods telling us what's good based upon their arbitrary decision? And in ethics, that's called Euthyphro's dilemma. What makes good good? And if you study ethics, you won't get more than a week or two into it before you'll have to read this story. What makes good good? What makes what Hitler did bad? What makes it evil? What makes good good? Now, some of you are young enough to wonder where this fits in, so hang on with me for just a moment. Let me tell you what my answer is under the Christian God view. The Christian God view doesn't have any trouble with this question. The Christian God view says God Himself is moral. God has attributes. He tells the truth. He doesn't lie. God has morality. He is light instead of darkness. He is love. You know, this is the morality of God. And God made humanity, man and woman. By the way, I don't understand why we say man all the time, because the one thing we all have in common is woman. But that may be because of my daughter's influence on me. But anyway, you know, the biblical view is that God made humanity, and I don't get into the fight over evolution. I don't care how He made humanity at this point in time, okay? He can make it any way He wants to make it. He can go poof, He can say it, He can evolve it, He can do whatever. That's not my fuss. So God has created humanity in His image, which means we're hardwired for this same morality. I mean, it's built into our DNA, if you will. It's in the fabric of the universe. This is the way humanity is. We value human life unlike anybody else does. That's an easy answer. Boy, you give me a jury of Christians and Hitler's dead. He's got no shot. Because you can very easily say what he did was wrong. Because there's something objective outside of us. But how do you get that measure? It's really hard to get there with no God. Because then you are in Euthyphro's dilemma. All of those answers. Well, wrong's determined by 51%. Wrong's determined by the smart people. Wrong's determined by what makes society work better. Well, what does that mean? If you're in Syria right now, it means something entirely different to the Islamic statehood on what's good for society. And yet I'll sit here and tell you it's wrong what they're doing. Now, if you're young enough, you're saying, Lanier, I don't think anybody even knows this stuff. And I would say to you, have you been listening to Kanye West and Jay-Z? Let's see if the sound works. Yeah, I mean, Jay-Z and Kanye West read Euthyphro's Dilemma. I think that is honking cool. If they ever come to Hull, shout it out. Sing about Euthyphro from the audience and see if they will. You know, this is the real question. It's a real issue. And I think it's one that tells me, because I believe in objective morality, it most fits consistently with a Christian worldview. It's what makes the most sense of why I'm hardwired that way, why you're hardwired that way, even if you don't believe in God. If you don't believe in God, you're sitting there saying, oh, there are other explanations. He's leaving this out or he's leaving that out. And I would sit with you and I would talk to you till the cows come home and see if I couldn't convince you. I had this discussion with this fella today. Let me go to the next slide. Because part of your morality is we all believe that humans are unique. So I'm having this debate with this atheist today on the radio. And I said, look, we're not a sack of chemicals. See, Christianity says God has formed us in His image. There's something unique about humanity. Adam, in the story of Adam and Eve, he's not able to find a wife among the animals. Because that story is there to teach us the uniqueness of humanity. Don't get me wrong, if you love your dog, you love your dog, but not the way you'd love your spouse. There's something very unique about humanity, and we all sense it. And the man said to me, well, and I said, listen. I said, it's a fact. He says, I read your book, and on page 85, or whatever page it was, you're wrong. You do not realize that we're not only, humans are not the only ones who have this objective morality. It comes from empathy. And other mammals, especially the intelligent ones, can empathize. Put themselves in others' shoes. And it's the fact we put ourselves in others' shoes that make us objectively moral. Think Hitler's wrong, etc. And I said to him, because he didn't like my argument. At first, the first guy I argued with about this said, hey, caring about others is just the way of nature. I looked at him, I said, do you have any knowledge of what goes on in the ocean? I have yet to find the shark who treats other fish the way he'd like to be treated. I'm rather hungry. You do look tasty. But I would not like to be eaten, and I can empathize with you. So I'm going to let you live. That's not the world. That's a uniqueness among humanity. And those people who are so depraved that they have no trouble taking human life, the rest of us say there's something wrong with them. Serial killers? And I'm not talking about breakfast eaters. I'm talking about serial killers. There's something mentally deranged because it's not normal. The man said to me, well, you're wrong. It's all part of empathy. And I looked at him and I said, oh, so all these mammals that are empathy mammals. Yes. I said, I didn't know you were a vegetarian. He said, I'm not. And I said, so do you eat pork? He said, yes. I said, but pigs are some of those empathy animals, if you'll read your book. They're smarter than dogs. We have pigs too. You can house train, we have not house trained our pigs. Our pigs stay outside. You can house train. They can swim. They can come. They know their name. They know basic commands. They eat like a hog. But they're smart. They have empathy. I said, and you're eating them? He said, yes. I said, do you eat people? Well, of course not. So there's something unique about a human. Well, I mean, I'm not going to eat someone who's, humans are intelligent. I said, not all of them. I got some cousins you hadn't met. They're also brother and sister. And Janet, I just say nothing about Arkansas. So I said, no, there are people. I said, what about someone who's brain dead? Do you say, hey, let's turn off the plug? This is an excellent source of protein. There are children who are starving in Africa. We need to use this to help take care of them. He said, of course not. I said, you bet, because you may think you're in, actually we were in London. You may think you're in London, but you're in Hull. You may think you're living in a world with no God, but there's a God. And you're hardwired to know it. You're hardwired to say there's something unique about a human. There's something special about people. And it's not just because we're the zenith of evolution. He tried that one too. He said, no, people are smarter than animals. We're smarter than apes. I said, no, you're not going there either. You're basing that on these tests that we wrote for us. But you take the test of how do you survive for 10 years in the jungle without any food. And the ape's a whole lot smarter than you are. The bottom line is you know that humans are special. You know there's something unique about us. Explain it to me if there's no God. I'm just a sack of chemicals. He didn't like that discussion. He was ready to change subjects. I believe in love, and I don't want to take a lot of time with these, but love is not just a chemical reaction in my brain. Don't get me wrong, that's part of it. I see my wife, I have that chemical reaction in my brain after these decades and decades. I adore her. She's my best friend. But I want to tell you, I also love her. I love my children. I got a group of friends I love. Now, I'm working on loving my enemies. I don't love them yet. I certainly don't like them. There's an American movie. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll just throw this. Shenandoah, Civil War movie. The old patriarch, his wife's dead, and he's got daughters, and the soldier comes a-courting one of his daughters, and he's in a rocking chair, and the boy's all nervous because he's going to ask for the daughter's hand in marriage, and he goes up there and he says, Jimmy Stewart's the dad, if you ever watch Jimmy Stewart movies, and he says to the dad, he says, sir, I'd like to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. Jimmy Stewart says, do you like her? And he says, I love your daughter. I've loved her since I met. I didn't ask if you loved her. I said, do you like her? I loved her mother for 20 years, but I didn't like her for half of them. I mean, I believe in love. And I'm not talking about just, and as a Christian, I'm sitting here saying, of course I believe in love. God is love. And He's made me in His image. And He's made me to where my heart sings over the idea of love. I want to be loved. I want to be accepted. There's this cry of my heart and my life that says, just love me, please. And I think most people are that way. Because we're hardwired that way. This is not simply, well, there's no God and we've evolved into a people who are pushing. We're more fit for the environment if we have this desire to be loved. Maybe, but I don't think so. In my reasoning, the ones more fit for the environment are the ones who love themselves and don't mind rolling over other people. That's the way it works in the ocean. And that's the way it works in all of the species. And I got news from my debate buddy today. I told him this on the radio. Apes kill apes if they're not of their tribe. Lions kill lions if they are of their tribe. That's just not the rule of the Serengeti. And yet it's there. It's within me. I believe in love. I'm not what I'd like to be. The Bible says that humanity, this is the Christian explanation for that. The Christian explanation is that God made us in His image. He made us to be in fellowship with Him. He made us to be in a relationship with Him. But sin has hindered our ability to do that. The biblical story of Adam and Eve is that they sinned and they fell. That's the biblical image from God. Because sin is something God's not. So the biblical image is God is here. And He made us to be with Him here. But we chose to go there. And God is perfect. God is who He is. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So He can't just say, well, okay, I'll become a liar so I can hang with the liars. Liars can be inside me. No, God's not a liar. So if we want to be liars, all right, how about this? God's not selfish. A lot of people think, a lot of people don't understand the Christian God. I've got a whole chapter dedicated to misunderstandings, and Christians are the worst. Look, if you don't know Christianity, you've got a head start on 90% of the people who do. Because we have all these misconceptions about God. God's not selfish. He doesn't want us because He needs a bunch of worshipers. Because He's some egomaniac sycophant who wants people going, oh, you're great, you're great, you're great. I feel better now. That's not what's happening. Okay? He doesn't need, look, there's a psalm where God says in the Psalms, I don't need you. I don't need you to kill me some cows. I made them all. I want a cow. It's mine. You think I need you to give me a cow? Because the Israelites thought, oh, we got to go kill a cow for God. He's getting hungry. And He's like, no, those are the pagan gods. God is not selfish. He doesn't need us. He loves us. He doesn't. So we're selfish. How does God say, well, I'll just become selfish so I can be over here with Him? No, He's not doing that. So there's a real problem here. I'm not what I want to be. I'm not what I'd like to be. And the Bible says it's because of my sin that I'm just not, that I was made to be like God. And live within God. And I'm not. And I can't. And it's not like I'm better than He is. It's not like, oh, that's because I've got, I mean, look, if this were the other, if there's no God, it seems to me after a few 100,000 years, we'd get this thing right. And survival of the fittest tells me that the most fit for the environment is the person who can live the way they want to live, who doesn't have this struggle with sin, who doesn't have to put on guards. Women, you don't understand what it's like to be a guy. Did you know as a guy, you almost have to look just like this? Because if not, women will think you may be looking somewhere else. And you might be sometimes. And you would think survival of the fittest is going to ensure after a few 100,000 years, the people who are most fit for the environment aren't going to struggle with sin. If they think something's wrong, they just, hey, I'm not going to, we're all going to be svelte. The six-pack is not what you buy at a store, it's what you see in the mirror. You know, I mean, we're all going to look like, what's his name? Rambo. Stallone. Stallone, thank you. Said Stallone. Good to see you, Rocky. I mean, we're all going to, but no, we don't. Because we all struggle with this. We're not what we'd like to be. What about the last one? I long for something more. Hey, the Bible answers that real clear. The Bible says that we all long to be in fellowship with God. Augustine said we have a vacuum, a hole in our heart that's shaped like God, and only God can fill it. This is something that philosophers have been talking about. If we're Augustine, we're 400 AD. We're 1,500 plus years ago. They've been talking about it longer than that. This recognition that there's got to be more to life. And that's a recognition that gets fulfilled. There's something past that door. Now, maybe that's because there's no God. But you know, I don't see that in my pigs. I'm not saying they don't root around looking for an extra corn kernel. My dogs are always wanting another treat. Kangaroos, white bread. It's like cocaine for them. I'm telling you, man, they will kill you for a piece of white bread. Brown bread? Pfft. White bread? But humanity, we've got this sense. And I'm telling you, I look at all of these things and I look at these choices and I put all of these choices down. And these choices make great, perfect sense to me if there is a Christian God. It makes sense of the world. It makes sense of how I am. It answers these questions. And without it, I may think I'm in London, but I'm not. I'm in Hull and delighted to be here. And so my hope for this, and I get to preach Sunday, twice, Sunday morning, Sunday night. And my hope would be that I might see some of you there, but I'm also going to be, well, I'm speaking at the law school tomorrow, but I will not be talking religion. It's all law. But I would love to talk to anybody who wants to talk. Melvin, a number of us would love to visit with you about this some more. I'm telling you, it is so nice to have answers to those questions that make sense and that I can experience in my life. And if I could, if I thought no God was the answer and it made more sense, I'd embrace it in a heartbeat. I'll close with this story. I was speaking to a set of lawyers who were asking me about this. I was at a seminar, and they said, please, please. And one of them said, Mark, I'm an atheist. Come with me. Come with me. Embrace no God. You'll love it. And my reply to him was this: I'm sorry I don't have enough faith to reject God, because God makes more sense out of this whole picture. The Christian God, rightly understood, makes more sense out of this picture than anything else. So that's where I am. I don't know where you are, but God bless you, and I'm wide open for questions with any time we've got left.